I'd like to welcome you to the Calaveras Council of Governments Wednesday, February 3rd, 2016 meeting. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial, will be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested party may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion. Any items by the board you'd like to have pulled?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item number 6 for a comment.
Okay.
And on item 1, the minutes from last meeting, I'll have to abstain.
Okay. Anyone in the public that would like to have an item pulled? Mr. Caldwell, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. I'd like to ask the council if they would pull off for discussion item 2 and item 7E, please. Thank you.
Seeing no further requests for pulling, is there a motion before the board to approve items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7A, B, C, and D?
Not 6, though, that was pulled. Right.
Correct. Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
know, it's confused me too there.
Okay.
I move we approve as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Councilmember Kearney, seconded by Councilmember Munides. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0. 6-0. Okay, item number 2, the fiscal year 2015 overall work program, second quarter report. Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. I wanted to bring to your attention, once again, as I do occasionally, this table. It shows that roughly exactly 50% of the time in this fiscal year has expended. And if you look at the accomplishment of the work of the 19 projects, 10 of them have less than 50% done. 15% done. And once again, I'll repeat what I've said in the past, is that if these proponents of these projects don't want to move on them, then my suggestion is that you rescind the money and rescind the project and give the money to someone else if you feel compelled to, at least someone who will actually move on the project and get something done. It's a shame that all of this money of these 10 projects is sitting here not getting the project done, and yet it's a tying up money that you have available to you. Thank you.
Wes, you'd asked for item number 6 to be pulled, the accepting of the State Route 449 Gateway Corridor.
Sure. The reason I pulled this, I just wanted to take a moment and to publicly acknowledge and thank the COG staff, Carl Baker from Caltrans, our consultants, design workshop, just for the wonderful job everybody did in implementing and developing the partnership planning grant. It truly was a collaborative effort. Amber and Carly did an outstanding job in promoting, marketing the meetings and getting the word out. We had good public participation. We had an abundance of ideas, all of which was precipitated down into some good recommendations. And I just couldn't be happier, and I think the City of Angels Camp is going to be a good beneficiary of the report. Hopefully, we'll make it all the way through to the California Transportation Commission and get them to accept one of the recommendations, which is for a design exception and allowing another entrance off of Highway 4 into that northwest portion of the city. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll make a motion to approve item number 6.
Okay.
Second.
All right, motion made by Councilmember Combs, seconded by Councilmember to approve item number 6 of the consent agenda. Any further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
We still have to go back to 2, though.
2 and 70. And number 7E, you just wanted to address the issue of 70 on the correspondence? You asked that it be pulled, the Caltrans 10 highway operations and project work plan? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs again. I wanted to mention that having worked for Caltrans for about 20 years, the shop program moves very slowly. If you get a project initiated, the average time, I'm told, is 7 years until you see construction. So you need to have a lot of lead time in advance of a project you might be interested in having it come to fruition. So my suggestion is, even though these may be good projects that they've identified here, my suggestion to you is that you consider asking Caltrans to add a couple of other projects on here, at least to get the ball rolling, because it takes so long to get a project to completion. And one of those is, I don't need to tell all of you, that the state highways in Calaveras County, for the most part, have very narrow shoulders, if they have shoulders at all. And I particularly see it on Highway 26 driving into Valley Springs. People walking along there or bicycling along there are taking their life in their hands, particularly after dark. And since it's now getting dark relatively early, it makes it even more hazardous for them. And in addition, the law that was passed last year, I think it was last year, it could have been the previous year, that requires drivers to give bicyclists 3 feet of leeway. Well, if you give someone 3 feet of leeway on the stretch of Highway 26 that I drive, you're going to be in the other lane. So you have to have some sort of a shoulder to have the bicyclists and the pedestrians have the ability to walk on or ride on, so that they don't get injured or hurt or killed, any of those. The other suggestion I have is sort of along the same lines. Caltrans is scheduled to make a left turn improvement at St. Andrews and Highway 26. And they're also scheduled to make a left turn improvement and intersection improvement at Vista del Lago in 26. I went to them about a year ago now, probably, and asked them to include in that project the widening and realignment of the gap, and it's about 1,500 feet between the 2 left turn projects. And I said, you know, it's relatively, the right-of-way appears to be relatively wide in there. And I said, what you're going to have is this very narrow, it undulates, it's windy, and you're going to have people going through those intersections at a greater speed because now they're nicely aligned, and it's going to create an unsafe condition. Well, what they told me was they had no record of any accidents along that stretch of road, so they can't justify spending the shop money, or safety money, I should say, safety money, because that's what's funding the 2 left turn lanes, is safety money. But that doesn't mean you can't ask for that widening realignment under the shop program, because that's a natural for a shop project. So my other suggestion would be requesting that Caltrans add that gap filler there with a realignment of 26 and the widening, so they can get the shoulders widened, they can get it realigned, and it'll fit with the 2 new projects they're going to be doing there. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2 on the consent agenda was an informational item, as was 7E, but do we have a motion to approve items 2 and 7E as...
Can I make a comment on that first?
Certainly.
Chair? On item 2, I really appreciate what Mr. Caldwell's bringing up, and I'm wondering if at the next meeting we can have an update on projects that aren't done. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can take the money out of them or not, like he's suggesting. We've never, since I've been on here in the last year, we have never done that. But I think it's a fair question to ask where we're at with the status of these projects. And who knows, maybe something is stalled that for some reason, and with money so tight right now, money could be diverted to something else that we need done.
So I can speak directly to the overall work program, and the majority of the funds in the overall work program are tied to the COG operations budget, and they will be spent by the close of the fiscal year because the funds will be expended. Specifically, we have funding set aside for the grant development. We're waiting for an active transportation grant cycle to be released, and we hope that the city and county will ask us to support them, provide some staff support, and write some grant applications. We do have the regional transportation plan update. We've identified funding in this fiscal year with the potential for that project to cross over multiple fiscal years. That's a long-term planning effort. We will begin expenditures under that. That's not one that we can withdraw funding from. It's a required function of the organization. The Tri-County U-Plan and data development, a lot of that is hinging on a grant opportunity that we have with multiple counties. So again, not funding that we could pull, but the progress of our efforts is really kind of dependent on a much bigger process that we have there. The active transportation program we are currently working on. Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the money that we've identified for San Andreas Elementary School. We've issued an RFP, and we've engaged the community, the Parks and Rec, San Andreas Elementary. Those funds will be expended by June 30th. The development of the Consolidated Transportation Agency, we do have a consultant under contract now. Again, the funds will be spent by June 30th. The majority of the funds in the overall work program, I'm confident, will be expended. If the council would like, I think more specific to Mr. Caldwell's concerns are the capital improvement projects and the construction projects that we have funding that has not been claimed or allocated. So if you'd like, we could bring back those with a status report for council consideration.
I was trying to follow as quickly as I could, looking upside down here, and it
Yeah.
sounds like you went through them all.
Yeah, so I think if there's an area, the COG overall work program, again, it's task specific to our operations budget. If, for example, you've got Mountain Ranch Road, we have an $80,000 RSTP earmarked for the Mountain Ranch Road project. The county has asked that that stay there. They are facing challenges that are unavoidable on that project. That's not money that we want to take off of the table. We want to continue to leave it there for them. And I think that the only other area that we could really dive into are city and county capital projects that haven't been claimed for more than a year.
Okay, I appreciate you responding, Melissa. I
Sure.
really do. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I move to approve item number 2.
Okay.
Second?
Second? Sorry. Item number 2, to approve by Councilmember McCartney, seconded by Councilmember Merides. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll throw 7E in there as well, as that was an informational letter. Our regular agenda, item number 8 is public comment. Public comment is for items limited to public interest at the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. 5 minutes per person. Is there any public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to item number 9. The opportunity to appoint a new chair and vice chair for the 2016 calendar year.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate yourself, John Gomes, to continue on as chairperson for the COG. I just realized John is the senior member of this COG at this time. He's certainly the most experienced and has done a fine job as a facilitator, as building consensus and being courteous to the audience, and I think it would be a great asset to have you continue. So I would make a motion to nominate you.
And I would wholeheartedly second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the appointment of the chair?
Call for the question.
Call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Congratulations.
Now the opportunity to have a vice chair appointed by the council. We have someone So I'm interested in being the vice chair.
I think we should nominate Justin.
I think you just did.
So I'll move to nominate Justin.
I'll second that.
Okay.
It'll be very enlightening for him. He can dive into it. I think it's good experience for him, so.
And let's face it, he was persistent.
Oh, very persistent, so we're happy that he stuck it out. And I think that's really great.
That's
All right.
a compliment.
I will call for the question on having Justin Catalano as our vice chair.
Aye.
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 Justin, 6-0, nice job.
Nice. Congratulations.
Excellent.
It's like 0 to 105 seconds.
It's worse when you don't show up.
I can imagine.
It's worse when you don't show up.
Yeah, exactly, worse.
Okay, item number 10, the minute order accepting the final short-range transit plan and support for the County Board of Supervisors directions to staff to move forward with the county efficiency model. Action. This is a Ms. Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, I will turn this over to Amber Collins. She's going to be presenting staff's recommendation. And then we also have Cliff Chambers of Mobility Managers, who is joining Amber in case there are any questions before the Calaveras Council of Governments. As you know, we have had this document circulating, released in admin format since September. I believe released for public review in October. So we're bringing back the final for discussion, but I should just leave the details to Amber because I'm messing it all up, I'm sure.
Well, I won't go over too much because we've already had many presentations about the details, but this item, staff is recommending your acceptance of the final short-range transit plan update. Staff will also be asking direction from the council to work with county staff to bring back alternative performance measures and targets as requested by county staff at a later council meeting. At the last meeting, Cliff Chambers came and did a presentation of the public draft that was released in November. Went over all the recommendations that were in the report. And at that time, we had a couple comments from council members. We had one public comment. And we also then received in January at the close of the public comment period, additional public comments or comments from public works staff, paratransit services staff, and a public comment from Common Ground Senior Services. And those comments and how they're addressed in the final plan, I included and attached to this memo. The comments really warranted only some minor changes to the report, and I'll just note a couple. We added, based on Jim Herminger's comments regarding the on-time performance standard, we added a flex route standard so that there's a different on-time performance standard for the deviation routes versus fixed routes. We also added some clarifying language regarding the on-time performance that was surveyed by mobility planners in 2014 versus some recent improvements to on-time performance that's been observed by the operation contractor and brought to our attention through their public comment provider. And so in addition, the county comments on the public draft, it did express concerns regarding the performance standards and targets. And so that's going to be, one of our requests from the council for direction to go back and work with county staff and bring back some more realistic performance targets for the operation. So we're here to answer questions. The chamber is here to answer any more technical questions that we might not be able to answer for the council.
Okay. Well, I'll open it first to the board. Are there any questions or comments by the board regarding the short-range transit plan?
No, but I want to keep a promise that I made to Supervisor Wright, and the language isn't in here, but he was very concerned about some language that would take the trips down to 2 trips a week to certain parts of the county if it warranted it. And I want you to know it was a very long discussion between him and Public Works, and I promised him that I would relay that, and I'm keeping my word on that.
Okay. And I think that you can inform confidently Supervisor Wright and the Board of Supervisors. The COG has no subject matter jurisdiction over implementation or changes to any route. So this governing body would not consider any modification. It would be completely within your subject matter jurisdiction. So just so that he feels comfortable, no action will be taken on modifying his route here.
I will keep my word and I will tell him that.
Any further board comment? Any public comment? I did.
I'm sorry, getting hard of hearing, so maybe, Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. Mr. Chairman, and members of the council, in reading this item through and looking at the comments made particularly by the county, because this isn't exactly a glowing report on the operation of the system by the county. And what I noted here, it seemed like, in a number of instances, that the county is taking a negative view and has become defensive. And instead of taking a positive view and moving on from here, and this is what we can do to improve the situation, it's a negative view, such as words, if it were COG, one of the suggestions or alternatives was that COG would be a possible management entity. And the county comment here on 1D says that under the proposed management shift, the COG would be overseeing itself. And it goes on to say, the next sentence, would provide some cost savings accompanied by a loss in checks and balances inherent in the current system. Well, you know, this is really antagonistic. Besides that, the current system, the management is overseen by the Board of Supervisors, so there's no checks and balances there either. But nevertheless, the attitude throughout the responses by the county has been negative in reading this, and I wrote here on the comment, county comment 1E, defensive. In county comment 2, I wrote fighting. They want to fight. They want to pick a fight with the COG over this. And I don't understand this attitude. And of course, my feeling is that you just need to accept it and move along, get the thing straightened out as best you can, make some positive suggestions on getting the system going, and not, you know, haggle over whether or not some other agency is qualified to do it, or whether or not the comparative counties or entities were comparable to Calaveras County. Just, you know, and I wrote here, just do it. And I wrote again on county comment number 4, defensive. You know, if you look through this and read these responses, and I should say comments, not responses, it just is the wrong tone that they've set, in my opinion, for responding to the report by the consultant. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? So we have a motion to accept the final draft of the short-range transit plan. Councilman Paul.
If I may make a comment and then follow it up with a motion. Yeah, I strongly believe that this COG should accept this report. This is a very valuable document. There's a lot of good information in here. There are some of which I don't personally agree with. And I'm pleased to hear that the county has taken assertive steps to say we want to continue transit, and I'm supportive of that. I think a lot has changed in the last couple of years. I think we have it with our new Public Works Director, Jeff. We have qualified management overseeing the operations, with Deborah being assigned to day-to-day operations. I think marvelous advancements and changes have been made, even later on tonight when we look at the transit report. it's beginning to look very positive, very promising. So to follow up and pursue some of the recommendations at this time, I don't think are warranted, but there's good information in here. The goals and performance standards, the recommended service plan, even the portion of the report that the county has already chose to follow, the county efficiency model. Those are all good positive steps. And I think to do nothing at this time would be a terrible misjustice and a big waste of money. I think we need to adopt or accept the report, and it's a living document, and we can continue to work through it and adapt it as new information comes available. So I would urge everybody to approve my motion to accept the report.
Motion's been made. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Catalano. Any further comment by the board?
Question?
Go ahead.
Just so that I'm clear in my mind, if we accept the report, we're accepting the consultant's information and his observations, but we are not directing or shoving down any of the options to anyone. Is that correct?
That's correct. The recommendations are there for us to take up in the future, should we choose to.
And I'm assuming we would have at some point in the future a workshop or a...
Can I clarify, please? It's not the jurisdiction of the Calaveras Council of Governments to move forward with implementation of any recommendation. That would be the sole responsibility of the Board of Supervisors. We are accepting the report as final, I think acknowledging what Wes has said, that there is some valuable information. As individuals, we may not agree with all of it, but the report is complete. The contractor has met our performance expectations for the delivery of the product. We should accept it as final. We did add on as staff that we also support and have kind of a recognition of the Board of Supervisors' decision to move forward with a county efficiency model. That was a further recommendation of me as the executive director to demonstrate our support as a regional body for the county's commitment to move the system forward in an efficient manner. So that is all we're asking for. If you chose not to support that, it's merely symbolic. We have no jurisdiction over how the county moves forward with implementation. We just wanted to recognize they made a decision. We support that. We feel that if they move forward with that, it's in everyone's shared interest. So we're just accepting it, recognizing their decision, and supporting them in that decision moving forward.
Thank you. Okay. Any
And
further?
I'd like to say that I'm very happy that you feel that way. And there's a lot of great information in here. You know, the study is very thorough. And I think that you know, Public Works would probably be very well smart enough to know that they could take any information within here and use it to whatever makes the program better anyhow. So it's great having this amount of choices, really. So, and they're not, you know, they're not gonna beat a dead horse, you know. So I think they're doing a very good job right now. The momentum is, I think, moving in the right direction. The idea is to take this document, accept it. It's a very well done document, and use it to its fullest potential. And I agree with that.
Any further comment? We have a motion by Councilmember Combs, second by Councilmember Catalano.
Actually, just...
Oh, a second by... All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 6-0.
Thank you, Cliff. We appreciate it.
What are you talking to me or?
Oh, sorry, Cliff Chambers.
Seldom a-
Thank you, Cliff.
seldom a second floor.
Item number 11, the county report, a verbal report.
Thank you. Thank you for the vote and support for the short-range transit plan. I think you know that the county asked for support from the Board of Supervisors for the county efficiency model, and we have taken a number of the suggestions that we found in the report and implemented them. We did have some concerns about the report with trying to change horses or change direction at this point without further vetting. And the county is certainly open to the potential of investigation of the details of a joint powers authority for the implementation of public transit here in the county. And I think more of these things will be vetted out as we move ahead with some of the other mobility manager, the CTSA, and as we get further into the implementation, work with COG staff to get measurable and definable judgment criteria. So thank you for that on the short-range transit plan. Moving on with transportation issues, we are looking at Public Works that we are going to get 2 of our bridges into construction contracts in 2016. One would be Railroad Flat, and another one is I always mess this one up, Stagecoach. We're cleared on environmental documents, cleared on our permissions to move ahead, getting our contracts ready to go. We have a number of contracts to get the Railroad Flat Bridge built, in addition to just the construction contract. So we're hoping to move forward with and get those 2 built starting this year. That will probably be not completed until 2017. We're also moving along with the Mountain Ranch sidewalk improvement project and the Polk Street intersections. We had to step backwards a little bit before we could move forward in terms of identifying the utilities or the conduit conductor underground utilities that were placed by the county during the jail project, almost at risk to be used in the future by PG&E, AT&T for the undergrounding. We had to get that defined first, so we had to take a couple steps back. We verified those utilities that existed without as-built plans. PG&E has accepted them, and they are now moving ahead with their composite designs. And I'm happy to say we have a new staff member, a new engineer, who is working at least part of her time on that specific project, so we hope to be able to bring that one forward to get environmental clearance and get into construction 2019, I think it is, Melissa? 2018 on the sidewalks? So, and we're going to have a lot more to discuss on Wagon Train later, so I'm not going to touch that. I'll be back. I want to turn it over to Deborah on transit report. Thank you. Any questions? Is there any need for you to hear an update on fire report for road repairs or anything like that at this point? Okay, good, thanks.
Item number 12, transit.
Good evening, welcome to new COG members. Start off with the year-end performance report that has been submitted to the Board of Supervisors. Start with the bad news, since I usually start with the good news. The bad news was that ridership was down, and that affected a lot of the other numbers. The good news was that operating costs were also down, and which gave us a operating cost per vehicle service hour of $101.81. So that was a reduction of almost 9% since the previous year. The other operating costs were down. Fuel cost reduction helped us a lot, and mostly we were helped by our maintenance costs were significantly reduced. We'll hope to see that moving forward in this next year. We've done a lot of fleet replacements and just taken 3 buses, old buses that are kind of conveniently breaking down just as we have the new ones coming in to service. So that worked out well. We'll have 3 buses to surplus. The proceeds from the sale of those will go back into the transit fund capital for capital uses. And so we have 2 new buses that we're just bringing into service, and we expect to receive 3 more later in the spring. These are purchased with PTMI SEA funds.
Deborah, if I might also point out on that page, the advertising revenue.
Advertising revenue was we had a good income this last year, and hope to keep that continuing into the next year. That's the advertising on buses, and we're looking into selling a little bit of advertising space in the map cases on the bus shelters. We did have hope to sell some advertising like inside the buses or along the rails. And there's on some of the new buses, we have racks there, but they don't seem to hold. We haven't found anything that holds something in place there.
And I think that this is an important program to point out, an important revenue source to point out, because for the first time this year, the advertising revenue was able to be utilized in the fare box recovery calculation. And it was able to be considered as local support, which is eligible to be included as revenue in that fare box recovery calculation. So I think that that was really beneficial to the system fare box recovery this year, for the first time being able to include that revenue in the calculation. I think it's important to note that Amador was successful in getting that in their TDA audits the year prior. Calaveras successful in utilizing their work and their argument for inclusion this year. But now I believe that TDA will be modified and amended to now include advertising revenue as local revenue, so it's clear and more easily defined.
It was our understanding that they would accept it as long as the board had approved a policy in that respect, and our board did that this last year, or the year before last. So, and that, as Melissa said, that helped us attain the fare box recovery ratio exceeding 10%.
Absolutely.
So if there's no more questions about the year-end report, I'd like to move on to the Delta Gold Line. It's our intercity bus service to Stockton. We've just completed production of a video so we can all see. Are there speakers, Amber?
No, but this laptop has pretty loud speakers.
Okay, crank her up,
We'll get you on. You want me to play now?
please.
See if that's on.
Where do we go from here? Calaveras Transit brings you the Delta Gold Line, an intercity bus service that connects Calaveras County with Stockton and beyond. Leave your car behind and take the new Delta Gold Line connector bus, equipped with a spacious luggage rack for a convenient and comfortable ride. The Delta Gold Line runs twice daily on weekdays between San Andreas and Stockton, with stops at Valley Springs, La Catenta Plaza, and Linden. Fares are $5 each way, or you can purchase 10 rides for $40. The Delta Gold Line has something for everyone. Major destinations include Delta College, various medical facilities, shopping centers, and entertainment hotspots, as well as Stockton Greyhound and Amtrak stations, with trains to connect you to San Jose and the Bay Area. Like all Calaveras Transit buses, the Delta Gold Line bus is wheelchair accessible, and easy-to-use bicycle racks allow you to extend your trip around Stockton or throughout the Sierra foothills. Take it easy, take the bus, and plan your Delta Gold Line trip today. Call customer service in advance to request drop-off or pickup at safe sites along the route.
You love that? This was produced by Cole Video using funds from the Intercity Service grant. And thank you, Amber, for the map work on it. So I have IT working on getting that on our Calaveras Transit website. And if anybody has any websites that they're connected to, appreciate sharing. I think this is the best way to get the information out there. I know Delta College and San Joaquin RTD will post it as well, information about the service.
Maybe you get it to the chamber.
The chamber is great, yeah. I think we have a lot of ways to get it out.
Is it stopping in San Joaquin County?
Yes, it's going to, okay, so starts here at the Government Center. We'll go to stop at La Quintana. Now, it can stop any place that it's safe as long as somebody calls the the dispatch office makes arrangements so the driver knows to look for him. It'll go down Highway 26, stop at La Quintana Plaza, our shelter there in that parking lot, and then go on to Linden, stop in Linden. There's grocery stores on either side of the street, and it'll stop. They were very welcoming of the service, and I've met some Linden residents who are interested in using the service. And then San Joaquin RTD, their transit center there, then Amtrak, Greyhound, Dameron Hospital, and then down Pacific Avenue to Delta College and Sherwood Mall. And then the driver has about an hour at that point, and if somebody requests it, it'll take them to Kaiser or Dignity Health St. Joseph's Medical Center. But we've entered into an agreement with San Joaquin RTD that we will not provide local service within Stockton, which isn't something we wanted to do, nor reasonable price. We have a flat rate of $5 per trip, so I don't think someone would want to take it across town. But San Joaquin RTD has been great. We produce decals to put on their bus stop signs. They've installed them. They've been very supportive of the service. We've been working on an agreement with Greyhound, an interline agreement where they would sell tickets for our service. We had a little obstacle in terms of insurance cover liability. I think we're going to clear that, and we'll have that. And we will have to have some Greyhound insignia on the bus. Their decals will be on our bus. But I think that will be a good asset for helping people when they want to make regional travel, both directions. So working on marketing, production material, working on a brochure. I always have some visual aids. Made it easier to understand. Flyer. Schedule with Amber's map. But now I need to make a tri-fold one that'll go in everybody's little holders at the bus stops. Any questions on the Gold Line? Riders, there's been some passengers, ridership will be slow to build. So help me get the word out.
Any council questions or comments?
Melissa, do you mind giving an update? I think while we're talking about the transit marketing, Melissa just wanted to make sure, Deborah, that you are aware of an opportunity that is budgeted for you in our work program.
So in our overall work program, work element number 11, we allocated $16,000 to the Calaveras Transit for any marketing. I think we talked about Tri-Transit Week or anything that you would choose to use it on.
That is excellent. I can think of a lot of ways to spend that. Okay.
So when you're in Stockton, somebody can't get on from Dameron Hospital and get a ride to...
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's the passengers that are on there are who you're dealing with, right?
It's inner city, where it's from here to there to here, generally.
How do they know that?
The bus drivers is, supposed to tell them, where you going, fares, $5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be too brutal about it, and I don't think it's really going to be an issue, but we have signed our commitment to San Joaquin RTD to not provide a local service.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a problem.
We're not competition. I think they're happy to have our service to serve theirs, because we do connect with them. People can take the Delta Gold Line to their station and then catch a local line. And they have great people in their customer service area that were thrilled to hear about it. They want to know all about it so they can tell people. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't think they'd have a problem. We're taking our citizens to the mall. They should be pretty excited to have us do that.
I think, our so far, our main ridership is college students, and, but we haven't made the marketing move to let people know that there are opportunities to get to their medical appointments, because I think that's going to be an important thing.
I trust you're reaching out to the high schools as well?
Oh,
for
yes.
Seniors who are
Yes.
graduating?
Yeah.
Great.
Been working with Terry Tanner and Sherry Rouge. Did you see Sherry in the video?
I did.
And her children, and,
Yeah, I seen them on there.
yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that.
I'll make sure she gets fined in the morning at Rotary.
Oh, yeah, they haven't seen us. This just was finished this
That
week.
makes it even
yeah.
funner.
Any
so
further
sure.
comments or questions for Transit?
Well, okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the low-carbon transportation operations program. We're still, this year we have the green ticket program. These are passes to help encourage ridership and encourage people to leave their personal vehicles at home and use public transportation. They're all-day passes on our regular fixed route, but they'll be good for one trip on the Delta Gold Line. So I'm hoping to get a lot of people introduced to that service in that way. First one's free. For next year, we've applied for a pilot Saturday service. I have a visual aid for that. I'll show you the route. You want to? And there's some here. This will be a route that runs from La Quintana Plaza to Murphy's with a little hook down to Worldmark, and I envision it serving both residents and tourists, going through Highway 12 to Highway 49, catching San Andreas and Angels Camp and Murphy's. I see opportunities for people to attend events at the high schools. Either way, both high schools, Performing Arts Center and athletic events, going wine tasting in Murphy's, shopping, dining, and there'll be 2 buses and with headways of 90 minutes, so kind of be able to go do something in the other town and come back. So we'll find out later in the spring whether we get that, and the funds will be,
This would be on like on weekends?
it's Saturday only.
Saturday only?
So starting towards the end of July, and then I figured 45 Saturdays, because we have some holidays falling on Saturdays. So till the end of the year, June
So you
June
pick-
23rd, I think.
You pick somebody up in a hotel, motel, and they go on a wine tour, and which is a good thing. They're coming back and they've been ushered. Do they just pay one price? Is that the vision?
Well, I figured the fare structure would be the same as our fixed route. Essentially, it would be $250 is how I, so, yeah, it will be each way $250. We'll figure out. I haven't done all the nuts and bolts of it enough to apply for the grant to estimate the costs, and so the LCTOP grant is $44,235, and there'll be, I figured, something $5,000 more fare revenue, and then a little bit of LTF funds to fill in.
So does this route, I know it goes to Worldmark, does it come back and go through Angels Camp and go out that way?
Yeah, it goes up Highway 4,
So it goes on the bypass?
not on the bypass.
Okay.
Downtown, go through downtown Angels and stop at the visitor center. You know,
All right, I like that.
Okay. So in Cal OES grant funding, I was hoping we'd have the lights out here. You can't see anything that's happened, but actually it's almost done. All the underground part has been done for those lights that will light up the courthouse steps out here. The concrete was curing slowly in the cold, wet weather, so we'll have that by the next meeting. If it doesn't rain solid in between now and then. Pre-TMISA projects are moving forward. I said vehicles have been ordered or received. A service vehicle has been ordered. Tools and equipment, some of it's been delivered, some of it's been ordered. Radio system, we're looking at the first week of March of the new radio system being installed in the transit buses. And AVL system, we're still researching that. Haven't made a purchase. Bus stop improvements, we're going to be working with the City of Angels to work on the siting and project description for the stops there moving forward. I think that's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
The radio and the AVL units, is that going to allow us to have Wi-Fi or internet service?
No.
Okay.
That would be nice. I'm always asking about that, but just, we don't have the signal here.
Okay.
So it's potentially be nice, be a good selling point.
Thank you, Deborah.
All right, you're welcome.
Angels Camp City report.
Excuse me, Dave Hannum is not here tonight, so I will defer to him to bring everybody up to speed on specific project reports. But there is one thing I would like to announce, and that is our Vice Mayor, Amanda Follendorf, has been appointed as the second representative to the COG, and will be sitting here. Bert is attending tonight as an alternate, but starting next month. Amanda could make it tonight, but she will be our second representative to the COG. And then, I don't know if it's appropriate, but Elaine Morris, who Amanda is replacing, has been on the board for 7 years, I believe, and it might be appropriate to give her some sort of acknowledgement. Thank you. That's it.
We'll work on getting that followed up. That's a good thought.
Caltrans report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to the new members on the board, and congratulations to the chair and the co-chair. A few things to do this time around. The most important one is to acknowledge that the State Office of Planning and Research has released the revised proposal to update to the CEQA guidelines on evaluating transportation impacts in CEQA. What that means is they have released guidelines to implement SB 743. That is the legislation that was passed to allow the change of metric for evaluating environmental impacts to transportation from level of service to a different way of measuring the impact. They are proposing in these guidelines to change it to vehicles miles traveled. That will affect the city and the county's approvals of development. It will also affect all the agencies that are implementing transportation projects. This is a big deal in terms of going towards the state goal of meeting the greenhouse gas targets. Essentially, if you're mitigating impacts to level of service the way we do now, if your project, say a subdivision, goes in and it has impacts to the highway, we would measure that in terms of not enough capacity on the road to accommodate the cars, and we might add lanes, turn lanes, other things that keep the cars moving. Under these new guidelines, we would look at how much vehicle miles traveled that subdivision generates, and if it is deemed to be significant, then we would look for mitigation to reduce the VMT of that project. Typically, those kinds of measures would be improvements to transit, improvements to bike and pedestrian. It could also include, in some cases, looking at different sites. In other words, if you have an infill site where there are those things available, you would have less VMT in the first place because people wouldn't have to drive as far. So these changes are important to rural counties. They're important to urban places, and they're very important to rural places too. And everyone should be aware of them, the public as well as the agencies. This current version has given areas 2 years to decide how they're going to implement this, and there's recommendations on how to make it work. This is, at this time, the public circulation. Comments are due by February 29th. And the law doesn't actually take effect until OPR chooses and actually adopts the guidelines. So there'll be sometime then, and then there'll be another 2 years for agencies that want to hang on to LOS for a while. So, couple of things. I guess one follow-up. There was a question on the work at Pool Station Road. I think Mr. Gomes. We did look into that. The question was about, there appeared to be an overlay of this brand-new project area at Pool Station Road and Highway 4 at the intersection. The project was a drainage project, and there was a considerable amount of work off to the sides of the road working on the drainage. The overlay wasn't because there was any failure of the previous road surface. It was to try to address the sheet flow off the road. I guess there was concerns of there was ponding on the road or something, so they wanted to change the profile a little bit, and they used an overlay to do that. A couple of announcements. We have, I gave Melissa Raggio a stack of mile markers, which is our performance measure publication. Essentially, Caltrans has a strategic management plan. There are 5 main areas that we're addressing, and the performance measures for those goals in our strategic plan are addressed in this. Essentially, it's a report, comes out quarterly. So that is available. Anyone that doesn't have a paper version, it's available online. Just Google Caltrans mile marker, and there it is. One of the goals in the plan, of course, is health and safety. The Caltrans produced the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, which is one of our efforts to address that goal. They're doing some public outreach, agency outreach. They're calling them safety summits. And there will be one in Fresno on February 23rd, one in Sacramento on April 7th. The plan proposes areas, regions of various counties that they felt fit together well for the terms of the plan. They put Calaveras in the Fresno group, which makes kind of a long drive to a meeting. I don't know that there isn't any reason to just go to the Sacramento one if that works out better for anyone that wanted to go. I don't know how specific to the regions these particular meetings would be. Then one more is from FHWA. They are putting together a plan called the CLRTP. It's the California Collaborative Long Range Transportation Planning Partnership. The purpose of this is to address access to federal land. So some of you may be familiar with the FLAP program, Federal Lands Access Grant Program, and there have been county and city applications to that. Presumably this plan would look at prioritizing what kind of access they want to fund with that kind of money, federal money. So it certainly may be of interest to the agencies and to the COG. There's a meeting for that on February 24th, and that is also in Fresno. And I've passed this along to staff. If you need it from staff, or feel free to contact me if you need it.
Just for an update on that, Carl, for the council, we are planning on attending that meeting. We are working with our project manager, Matt Sawtell, on it, and we will be preparing kind of a packet to kind of advocate if we have the opportunity for the Wagon Trail project. We've applied for FLAP grants twice and have not been successful. So we're looking to sort of learn what can make our application more competitive for that project.
I think this meeting is, one of your main goals is to find out what the meeting's about. The information wasn't that detailed about exactly what they're planning to do with this plan and what kind of input they're asking for.
We're going to be ready.
Go and, bring all your guns with you and be ready to let them have it. So I think that'll do it for this time, unless there's questions.
The flyer that you had, I think you mentioned it was the HSIP flyer, that red and white one. Do you mind if I have a copy of that? I'm not sure if I remember that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I had a question. Do you think that Caltrans would consider live streaming some of these things if they're really interested in greenhouse gas savings?
Very often we do. I don't think they've offered that for the safety summit, and that's a good question. I can check into it. Very often they offer them as a webinar where you log in and don't have to go all the way down there. And that way, you still can, there's an email link, you can send in your questions and they can address them. Very often when we have those kinds of connections available, they run out of connections and they wind up having to archive it so people can go watch the video later. But usually we try to accommodate that. And like I said, I don't see that on here, but I can certainly call and ask. Get back to you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Baker from Caltrans? Thank you, Carl.
Thanks.
All right.
Agenda item number 15, the update on the State Transportation Improvement Program fund estimates and impact to the regional program and Wagon Trail project. Request for direction, Melissa.
Now for the bad news. I wish I had better information to present on this topic. As the council remembers, we were here in December and we approved the 2016 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. The Wagon Trail project has been the #1 priority of the region for multiple cycles, and at that time we were looking at a zero capacity STIP. We were notified in January 22nd that those times are quickly changing. So as the council's aware, even to go back further, for the last 3 years we've been talking about this looming fiscal cliff. We've been talking about that moment that we all fall off and realize that there's not enough funding to cover the projects. So that moment is here. We've had several workshops, one in Murphy's, at Couts Ironstone, one at Greenhorn, talking about the options and the scenarios. So today I'm going to go over the realities of that fiscal cliff and what it's looking at. And I'm not even sure if it's safe to say we're at the bottom yet, but this is what I know today. So Amber, if you can go ahead and dive in. So first we'll start with some STIP basics, recognizing that we have some new council members that may not be aware, but the STIP is a 5-year program of capital state highway projects. We update it every year on odd number years. It's funded through the price-based excise tax, which is a portion of the gas tax that you pay at the pump. Capacity is usually in the last 2 years of the project, so new capacity in a normal STIP cycle will be in those outer years. So when we talk about, wanting to make sure that we have projects and wanting to make sure we have our real estate kind of secured in those early years, it's because if we're not ready to capture it, someone else is, and we'll have to wait even longer to get a hold of it, with new money not available till the last years of any cycle. For the Calaveras Council of Governments, we typically saw, since I've been the last 2 cycles, about $1 million per STIP cycle, per 2-year cycle of new revenue coming. With the 2000 STIP, when they released the fund estimate, said we had 0 capacity. So that meant a loss of about $2 million to our region in new capacity. In previous STIP cycles, the revenue we realized was over $3 million. So when we started this process with 0, that was already a loss of revenue to the region. And unfortunately, we went from 0 to a negative state transportation improvement program. So more of our STIP basics. The STIP is authorized under SB 45 and divided into 2 programs. The first is the ITIP, the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program, which is 25% of the funding, and the responsibility of Caltrans. We are the 75%, which is our RTIP, the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, and that is the responsibility of regional agencies under SB 45. So we look now at what's happening to funding at a statewide level. Unfortunately, the State Transportation Improvement Program, you can see, is at the lowest it's ever been since its creation. I think interesting enough to take a look at when we built the Angels Camp Bypass was a great moment in time for the entire state of California, as well as our region. The California Transportation Commission is saying that this situation is nothing short of catastrophic. That it is imperative that regions advocate for their projects, that they advocate with their legislators, and they make it known how valuable and important your projects and your hardship funding mean to the region. They're asking that because it's part of a much bigger statewide political discussion. We have 3 proposals on the table right now that address the fiscal crisis. All of them deal with increasing taxes, increasing vehicle fees, raising new revenue. And that's why we are where we are today, is that no one is wanting to generate the new revenue needed to solve these problems. The price-based excise tax has historically been about 18 cents per gallon. It fell to 12. Now the governor's budget is at 9.8. The Transportation Commission staff recommended it be set, I believe, at about 10 cents, with a projection to continue to increase. The CTC feels that that is not conservative enough. They're actually warning that it could be worse, and then there could be deeper cuts and revised fund estimates. We are at an all-time low, I'm understanding, since 1990. So what does it mean to go from a 0 STIP to a negative STIP? Actually, the result is we have to cut, or the state has to cut, $754 million from their program. They have more projects than they have revenue to afford. They need to prioritize. Their job is not unlike your job here as the regional agency. When the city and county come to us and they have $100 million worth of project needs, but we have $4 million worth of funding available. So they are fine-tuning their priorities. They're evaluating all of the projects, and they have warned that if regions don't work to push back and to cut, that they will unilaterally be deleting projects from RTIPs, and those projects may not return indefinitely. The biggest shortfall, unfortunately, is in fiscal year 16-17. When we talk about capacity, and there's historically new capacity in the outer years, well, we're negative. We're in the hole in 16-17 and 17-18. So those are the most competitive years where the largest majority of projects are going to be cut. Why does this matter to us? We have Wagon Trail programmed for design in 16-17, and we have to compete statewide to try to keep it there and continue our momentum on project delivery. So I have an article that we found here. I've provided in front of you a number of articles that have been provided. I've also included a letter from the California Transportation Commission, warning of the situation and what may be before them at the STIP hearings. So I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of the information that is coming directly from the CTC on this issue. So I encourage you to take a look at those as well. So what does this mean for Calaveras and our regional transportation improvement program? And what are we going to do from here? We really have just one priority project. It's not that we could prioritize another project over the others and eliminate those that are less of a priority. Calaveras has one, and it's been the #1 regional priority for a number of years. We have $6.8 million programmed, and the California Transportation Commission has come and asked that our share of the $750 million cut would be $1.5 million. We have been in contact with other local agencies, talking with Amador and Alpine to kind of discuss these impacts on a bigger level. We've been in communication with CTC staff, and I'm hoping that we're able to communicate with them. But this strategy that we have before you, we've offered 3 options. And I have a number of action items that I will be asking of you, but we'll take them each one at a time. And as we take them one at a time, I'm hoping that you can give me direction before we move on to the next item. I've got a few critical dates there. These are critical dates. This is a new revised schedule. The CTC had to adopt new guidelines and a new fund estimate. They've put February 26th as the deadline for our revised regional transportation improvement program to go back to them for their review. Another important date coming up, March 24th, which is the STIP hearing. You'll see in the letter to CTC, we may need to send delegates, and what I'm hoping is for the formation of a committee, because we will need to make our case for why the Wagon Trail project should be a state priority and be maintained in the program. We'll know by April 22nd what the recommendations are, and then by May 18th, the STIP will be adopted by the California Transportation Commission. So I will begin by seeking your direction on the first of our items, item A. So we need to look at a revised funding strategy. I provided you with 3 options. So first, let's take a look at where we are to start. We call this the as-is scenario. So this is what the council approved in December. You'll see that we have designed $2.4 million in 16-17. That was important to the Calaveras Council of Governments because they wanted to maintain some continuity in terms of project readiness. We've done a lot of work within the community. We want to continue that momentum. That gets us designed for the entire 6.6 mile segment. Then we realized that we would push back the right-of-way and construction, realizing that there was no new revenue, realizing that our ability to leverage funds and realize a bigger project was getting more and more difficult until we have a bigger statewide solution. We programmed right-of-way for the entire segment, but we programmed a construction project that included Bonanza Mine Way. I want to say that the right-of-way number, according to county staff projections, is low. We need to respect that, that expertise and know that. But we've also said to the community that we will not be acquiring right-of-way for anything we can't reasonably foresee constructing. It's important that we keep that money there. Remember, I talked about keeping the real estate in the years that you want it. If all we can build is the Bonanza Mine Way, the Appaloosa Way, then those funds can shift to the construction phase, and we only acquire right-of-way for what we need. But we want to make sure that we have the funds to try to secure the entire right-of-way, and as much as we can reasonably foresee needing at this time. That is the 1.3 in 1819 with construction in 1920. This is the strategy that's approved, and this is your first scenario, the as-is scenario. Staff, unfortunately, I do not recommend this scenario. I think that this is a deal killer in front of the CTC, and it does nothing to address their concerns, which were cut and pushback. So then we go to the next scenario, which is the leave room to negotiate scenario. So you notice that I'm still leaving design for the entire segment. I want this project as construction ready as we possibly can get it. That's based on the idea that this time will change. We've had peaks, we've had valleys, that we anticipate that there will be a solution at some point in time. And I want the Wagon Trail project to be ready when revenue does become available. We've gained too much momentum in the early phases of the project, and I'm not ready to let that go just yet. So we're leaving the $2.4 million in 16-17. That is an ask of the CTC. because they are negative in 16, 17. But I'm hoping that that can be an area or point of negotiation. We've reduced our right-of-way and we've reduced our construction. So we've reduced our right-of-way to be Bonanza Mine Way to the Appaloosa. If you remember, my construction project is really just that Appaloosa Road intersection anyway. That's the only thing I can see constructing at this point in time. So we said, okay, let's go from Bonanza Mine to Appaloosa. This is based on Drake Hagelin's cost estimates of what they anticipate that to cost. And then we have the construction project. Our goal in the beginning was to improve Appaloosa intersection. We hear from the community that that's not only a state highway issue, but the residents that live in that community are challenged every day by the sight distance of that vertical curve. So we know that on a local level we have an issue, not just a state highway. So we're going to continue to support that, but we cut there because our goal was to try to extend that project boundary as far to the west as we possibly could, hoping that we would get SHOP funding on that east of Pool Station Road curve. So we got to do what we got to do, and if we have to cut, then we can solve our local issue, but it's getting harder and harder for us to meet Caltrans halfway in terms of leveraging those dollars. But Caltrans is in the same situation. They're cutting projects too. So,
Is there accidents in that area?
you know, surprisingly, no. There's not enough.
Can't believe that.
And it's because really, I think the residents that live there, there's not enough to warrant Caltrans coming in and doing a safety project. The county has made the inquiry in that area, and I think it's because the residents there have identified an alternative that provides them safe way out. So that question has been asked, and I know it's surprising.
Might be because the road just doesn't allow fast speeds either.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Oh, it's got the gas limit right there.
Okay, so I stand corrected.
The local folks will be bypassing the whole route here pretty soon.
Oh, okay.
So what we understand about the local concern of the residents that live there is the intersection sits at the bottom of this curve, this vertical curve that comes up. Well, what the residents do so that they can safely make a left is they drive up the shoulder and around an oak tree so that they can avoid that curve and get enough sight distance. So, but nonetheless, it's a priority for us. You know, even if we don't have the accident data, we have enough concerns from the residents in the area that it needs to be corrected. So I think a priority of our regional funds.
So before you leave that scenario,
Sure.
so that achieves 1.5 million bloodletting, so to speak?
Yes.
That really leaves you with kind of an arbitrary number for construction, is that?
Nope, actually, that is the exact construction estimate. I have to have
Well, I
fully.
mean, but by cutting 1.5 million, does that define the limits of construction to some unbuildable point, or that'll get you all the way to Appaloosa?
Well, that will get the Appaloosa Road intersection improved. So I have to have a fully funded construction project that has independent utility. That means that project has to stand on its own, and it has to connect with the rest of the state highway.
Yeah.
The $1.4 million gets us that improvement. When we had $2.4 million, we had hoped to spread the project boundaries farther west.
Okay.
So now we don't have that option.
Sure.
But the 1.4 was initially the engineer's estimate. And then you'll see that if we weren't able to spread the project farther west, we said that we would do other operational improvements within the project area. So we didn't want the funds to be thrown away, but we recognized that our goal was to try to get as far past the intersection with a project with independent utility.
Okay.
This 1.4 still gets us there,
Okay.
according to the engineer's estimates, which those have a way of sneaking up on me too. But that's one of the things
How long has this, that intersection been an issue?
You know, I don't know, and I would have to probably defer to Supervisor Pawnee, but I just know that since we've been working on the project, in terms of a local concern, we hear a lot about the east and west of Pool Station Road. But that's universal. They're concerned not only about their local traveling needs, but the traveling needs of the region. But mostly in terms of local concerns, because of the residents that live there, we hear from them and how it impacts them on a daily basis. But how long they've been vocal about that, I'm not sure. I know that they've made requests to the county to try to pave the shoulder, We've made inquiries with Caltrans, and unfortunately, the response was, let's wait till this process gets through and let's fix it with the Wagon Trail project. So for me, that's why it needs to stay our priority as an improvement within that area. So this is what I'm recommending at this time, just wanting to caution that it is an ask. It's not everything the CTC asked us to do, because they asked us to push back and they asked us to cut. So we are not pushing back, but we are cutting. This is the only project that we have in our RTIP. Other regions have multiple projects that they could prioritize. This is our one and only project. That being said, we are at a disadvantage because we are not through the environmental phase. When Caltrans is having to prioritize limited funds, priority is going to go to projects that are through design, projects that are ready to start right-of-way acquisition and ready to construct. So I just wanted to let you know that there is some risk in this. Then we can go to number 3, which is cut back and sit back and hope that we maintain our program. This gives the CTC everything they're asking for. It would create about a 15-month delay in our project. This isn't a place that I want to go just yet. I want to build advocacy for our project. I want to build recognition from our project at a statewide level. But I think that this is a reality that council may need to consider. But it does decrease our momentum. It does decrease our ability to get a construction-ready project that much sooner, and to continue to compete for those leverage funds. The sooner I'm through design, the more ripe we are for other federal funding sources or state funding should those become available. So this is kind of a pushback and cut scenario. So at this point in time, my recommendation is to continue to work with a priority on scenario 2, recognizing that scenario 3 may need to be a fallback. Each day, and I've had an opportunity to talk with many of you, each day that we're working on this, the playing field is changing. We're learning new information and we're learning about new opportunities. But right now, I'd like to seek your direction to move forward with scenario 2, keeping scenario 3 on the table should it be necessary.
Okay. Councilman Ramirez?
They're asking for scenario 3, and we're leaning towards 2. If we select 2, is there any unspoken undercurrents that would affect the funding down the road?
I don't think that we are there yet, and I don't think that we will really know that till we put together a group and we start getting out and beating the streets to find out what truly that risk is and kind of put our finger on that pulse. This gives me direction to start moving forward, developing an RTIP strategy and scenario. And as we continue the discussions, we'll know if we need to fall back on scenario 3. But I don't think the time, I think we need to maintain this momentum and stay with scenario 3 and allow the discussion, scenario 2, and allow the discussions to continue. I would hate for this board to make a sacrifice too early that didn't need to be made. We are cutting 1.5 million. We are doing our part. And you may remember, we did our part to help the state address the shortfall that they had in 14-15. We had an allocation, we weren't ready, and we relinquished it to the state. This is an example of why you want to be ready, because once it's gone, it's gone. But we did our part then. And so I'm hoping that we can continue to make the case. But I'm just not there yet to ask you to make that decision right now. I want to still fight for where we are.
Given the schedule that you had in the next step slide,
Yes.
does your proposal fit within those dates?
It will, the February 29th or 26th deadline. Well, what I would like to do is schedule a special meeting with the board and kind of get direction. That'll be the next item that we have before you. So I will be reaching out to my counterparts. We'll be re-strategizing with your direction what this looks like in our RTIP submittal. We'll continue to be reaching out to CT staff to see what we can, or hear what we can hear. But no matter what we decide, we are at the mercy of the California Transportation Commission and their priorities. I'm not ready for this board to sort of pull the plug on the momentum. We're just not there yet. I may know more by the time we have the special meeting and we approve the RTIP. But for me, if I can get the direction to pursue 2, recognizing 3 may need to be our fallback, I think we're all aware of what the range of alternatives are.
It always bothers me a little bit when you're trying to strategize submitting proposals for funding, and I know we have to do this in a public forum and, ask for public input, but if you speak too loudly that we really want scenario 2, but we are willing to accept scenario 3, well, the commission's obviously going to say, well, then, scenario 2 is off the table, is scenario 3 or nothing, They're looking to save any kind of dollars from any agency that can to pass it on to someone else, and I agree that should be our first choice, scenario 2, but not speak too loudly about what we're willing to accept as a fallback.
Yeah, I agree. And I wish, though, that we had the CTC's attention to that level. If they gave us that option, that would be great. Unfortunately, I think that we're on uncharted territories. If we don't fight for our project, no one will at this point in time. And then the discretion of the CTC could be to just delete it in its entirety. So I think what we have done for too long is advocate for this project, make great progress in momentum, and as an elected board, I can't ask you to sort of back down from that momentum. I just need you to be aware of what the potential could be. And I think that that's sort of a responsibility that I have. I don't think the CTC will be watching this, but what they will be watching is if we are able to lobby our senator, our congressman, our assemblyman, if we are successful in getting them to realize what's going on out there in that 6-mile segment of State Route 4 and how much it means to the economic vitality of our community, then I think that that's really what's going to give us sort of a stronghold. And then I just am kind of hopeful that they do try to negotiate with us and that they do give me the opportunity to know if I ask for too much or not enough. But we're at their mercy. Yeah.
Are you looking for a motion or just consensus?
I'm looking for direction. So direction to move forward with scenario B, or scenario 2, recognizing that 3 might be our fallback.
I would say yes. Go.
I agree.
So I feel like scenario 2 is not just covering the continuation of the wagon trail project, but that's a problem area, and it's a safety concern. When people are actually circumventing the highway to be able to feel safe when they're getting onto it, we don't have an option for 3, really. It's one of those things that they're going to continue to do that until somebody gets hurt, and so we need really to address that. I believe that's a pretty fast area over there, and it's a little bit crazy just in that particular area.
Right.
So I say that scenario 3 is not even an option. Scenario 2 is the one that we should be looking at for the safety of our citizens, especially coming off Pool Station and in that area there that they're circumventing the whole highway. Basically, they're making their own.
They are.
Is this, if this is a safety concern, how come we're not pushing for the as-is scenario? Why are we going to step back and negotiate if this was our only project and a priority project?
Well, that's a really good question, because when it comes to advocating for the project, and we want to make sure that the state's aware of the safety issues, but we do that very carefully. Because then if it is sort of a recognized safety issue, then Caltrans sort of moves in, they conduct a safety survey. If they determine that it's a risk, then they have an immediate need to respond and identify a solution and then implement that solution. It's independent of sort of what we're planning and prioritizing. For example, when we said, the east of the Pool Station Road project curve is a safety issue, it's a problem, Caltrans responded by saying, we're putting in additional signage, we'll monitor it over a one-year period. And then we'll determine if further needs are required. What they're challenged by in terms of safety projects is that it has to meet a threshold, and the project improvement and the cost benefit can exceed certain limitations. If it does, then it sinks the project. So that's where State Route 4 is sort of at a disadvantage. And that's why we're advocating for the use of regional funds and in partnership with Caltrans for hopefully some operations funding. But that is a double-edged sword, because when we say that, then some people look and say, well, then you don't need those funds. It should go through the SHOP project. And then every supervisor that has safety, or city council members that has legitimate safety concerns, knows how hard it is to get those funds. So that is a double-edged sword.
Sure, but I applaud you for picking that, because that's where the issue is.
Right.
So,
I'm hearing-
I choose two.
I'm hearing the consensus of the board that we want you to move forward with scenario 2 as your strategy at this time.
Okay, recognizing that
3
may be the backup, just depending on how the days unfold. Okay, thank you. We'll move forward with our next request, which is item B. And we're asking to schedule or pull the board on dates that may or may not work. We have a deadline of February 26th for a revised RTIP. I would just need the majority of the board represented, but we will need to schedule a special meeting.
Here in these chambers, is that what you're asking?
You know, I will need to work that out. If I could get a range, if I could get what may work or not work, then I can work on the location and the availability at that point.
Well, we know it's not going to be the 23rd.
I would prefer,
Why wouldn't it be? Is that
I mean, I'm good.
That's a council meeting, okay.
I can only take one in one day.
So are you looking for that last week of February?
I think anything towards the end of February 17th, 18th, or 19th, or the front part of the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, and it looks like the 23rd is out.
Knowing that the data coming from the state seems to be developing still, I would probably advocate for the later part of that time frame rather than the early part. 24th to me sounds like a good time. If we can't get this chamber, I'm sure we can get CCWD to offer up their boardroom.
Okay.
An evening
24th.
meeting at 5 o'clock, would that work for you?
Which day?
What was the date?
The 24th?
24th?
24th at 5 p.m.?
Sure.
24th.
Location to come from Melissa.
5 o'clock. Okay. We have our direction. Thank you very much. We'll move to item C. So the California Transportation Commission made clear that advocacy at the regional level is going to be critical. The regions are working to draft letters, but we want to first let our legislators know what's happening and how it's affecting our regional projects. So I'm looking for your direction to authorize the chair to sign and begin authorizing letters to the following.
So moved.
So moved. Who said that?
I did.
Oh, thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I agree. He's got my direction. That way if something goes wrong, we blame it on John.
I'm hearing consensus to go ahead and do that.
Okay. Item D, recognizing that there may be a road of some pretty heavy political lifting. What I am asking for, and this recommendation is slightly modified from the recommendation I made in my staff report, just because of information becoming available each day. I've asked that we create a committee of 3 council members to work on advocacy of a long-term solution and to work with me on approaching our assemblyman, senator, and congressman on this issue. And I'm also further recommending that we add Supervisor Ponte and Project Manager Matt Satow to this committee as well. And so I would appreciate the council's support of the formation of that committee and then appointment of the 3 members.
she's been on the wagon trail from the get-go, and I have no issue with that whatsoever.
No, and in a conference call, I recommend the same thing. I'd say it's in her supervisorial district, and she probably knows as much as anybody about it, so I would say that's the right thing to do. And I would like to be one of the members on that committee also.
I would like you to be on there too.
I kind of thought that you were thinking that, and I was trying to take the heat off of you.
As long as I don't have to do it, that's great.
I would volunteer to serve.
Thank you. And then I was hopeful potentially that a community member and perhaps our chair now would also.
I'd like to be on that if
Okay. And that we
Is the
did.
council good with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay.
If we need funding for project manager Matt Salto, we have funding available to provide.
We are working on that. We did have an opportunity to speak with the Public Works Director. Matt has expended his contract for Wagon Trail Project Management, so I would like to identify funding. The contract is with the County Board of Supervisors, so I would like to work with Jeff. If the COG Board authorizes that funding and makes it available, then the contract would go before the Board of Supervisors for approval. So I would like to work with the county on identification of those funds and making sure that Matt has the time needed to support us on that effort. That would be brought to the council in a follow-up action, also brought to the Board of Supervisors in a follow-up action.
Okay.
By the 24th.
We would have time to work on that. I know you have 2 weeks lead time. That doesn't need to be implemented, and Matt is committed to the project. He's pledged his support in the meantime, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So then, E, I was just hoping to make aware of some ideas. What I'm hoping is that the committee that was just appointed by the Council of Governments, including Supervisor Pawnee and Matt Satow, that we can go on your behalf and have your support to engage our legislators, schedule educational and information opportunities, whether those be road tours, any meetings or events that we might have that bring this to a level of attention. So we're just looking that committee have your support and endorsement to act on behalf of the full council in that capacity.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there any reason why they wouldn't?
All right, so with unanimous support of the board, I have approval of items A through E. And I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have or questions from the public on the information that's presented.
No, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. Many years ago, when I worked at Amador County in the same position that Melissa has now, we had the same problem. We were short about $25 million to build the Amador bypass, we called it in those days. And we did a couple of things. One of the things, and I really like the idea that if you look at figure 2, the total cost under scenario 2 is reduced by over $1.5 million. The other thing is that the proposal includes a usable piece of construction. One thing that the commission did not want to see was roads going to nowhere. And so, the other thing I would suggest, or one of the things I would suggest is, at that time, even though I always thought I was pretty influential, I went before the commission a couple of times and looking for money, and I was unsuccessful. So we hired a lobbyist. His name is DJ Smith. I don't know if he's still around or not. But we also hired along with him Will Kempton, who was formerly the Assistant Director with Caltrans for Legislative Affairs. He is now the Director of Caltrans. And he was at that time doing consulting work. And so between DJ and Will, they had all of the people, they had all the right people that they could access easily. One of the things that was suggested here was to contact your assemblyman and your state senator and get them to advocate for your project. We did the same thing. We actually had each of them go up to the podium at the commission meeting and endorse the project. One of the things DJ did as a lobbyist, because I was there at the commission meeting, what would be the same as the one March 24th, the North hearing, I was sitting there and DJ personally escorted 6 legislators to the microphone who he was able to convince to speak on behalf of our project. And so it was impressive how these people could get these others in very high places to advocate for our project and the funding. And I can tell you, it was no different then than it is now. Well, I shouldn't say it's no different. They told us at that time, we don't have any extra money. It's all committed. It's all programmed. Now, here you, however, you have $754 million deficit. A little bit different, maybe. The other thing that they wanted us to do was, if we wanted favorable consideration, we would have to be a self-help county. In other words, for those of you who don't know, you've got to have a local gas tax or sales tax that's dedicated to transportation. And since you don't have that here in Calaveras County, and you're not about to get it before March 24th, if ever, the suggestion I have is that you've got some RIM money. The county has some RIM money. You might want to think about what you can do with respect to taking some of that money, if at all possible, that's been committed to state highway projects, preferably Route 4 somewhere, and see if any of that is available. Commission likes to see the local agency who are asking for big chunks of money, they like to see them to put up some of their own money, which seems natural. And with the fact that you're reducing, or you're proposing to reduce the cost by $1.5 million, that sounds pretty good. It would sound pretty good to most of the commissioners, I would think. The other thing is, well, how are we going to pay for a consultant or a lobbyist or whomever you might want to hire if you do? Well, earlier I said to you that there were 10 projects on your report, quarterly report, that hadn't gotten past 15% of completion. If you take those 10 projects and add up the funding you've committed to them, it's over $600,000. So you may want to look at, okay, well, these people aren't, or this proponent isn't moving at all, and they've got, you know, $50,000 or whatever committed to that project. You may want to tap that because it's worthwhile to get a consultant. And I don't know, for those of you who've been around a while, this council did hire Will Kempton to help them with the Angels bypass, and they're successful. Of course, like I said, Will is now director of Caltrans. So you can't very well get involved in that, but what I'm recommending is you hire a lobbyist or someone like Will who's got access to those people who make the decisions. And hopefully there can be some influence by those people, whoever you might want to hire, if that's what you want to do, and get this project funded, because it is a reduced, it's less than what, you know, you originally wanted. And the key word there in the proposal or the scenario was negotiate. And you can always negotiate. I don't care what they say about we don't have any money. You can always negotiate. So that, I would recommend that you think about hiring a consultant. Now, I'll grant you that time is short, and you're going to have to bring somebody on board really quickly in order to be able, and they need to touch base with your, obviously with your state senator and your assemblyman. I'm not so sure about having your congressman. You know, this is state money. And I don't know how much influence McClintock would have with the commission anyway. But you may want to think about at least getting the support of the, as recommended by Melissa, getting the support of your assemblyman and your state senator, for sure.
Thank you.
Question, Mr. Caldwell.
Yes, sir.
So, you didn't tell us, were you successful in your,
Yes,
was your
we got-
lobbyist successful?
We got the 25 million, believe it or not.
Okay.
And you know what we did, and it's not applicable in your case, but it was a project, the Amador bypass, we call it, bypass Sutter Creek. And we had a fellow go down, he was the local radio announcer, and he went down and he filmed, and he did TV work. He filmed logging trucks going across the bridge on Highway 49 in downtown Sutter Creek, or across the Sutter Creek there, and you could see them like this, bouncing up and down as the trucks went over, and he made a video of that and narrated it. We gave one of those to every commissioner and the executive director of the commission and his assistant. And one of the commissioners commented, I'll never forget this, he said, you know, I don't know how many more of these videos we're going to be receiving now because they were favorable with our project. But he said, I don't want to turn into the UCLA School of Cinema or whatever he said. Anyway, it seemed to work. And, you know, there was concern about how much the lobbyist costs. And my feeling was, we're spending a pittance relative to what we're asking for. As it turns out, we got about 25 million, as I said, and what we paid him was peanuts relative to that number.
Yeah. Thank you. Provitz.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, for the work that you've done. I think excellent. It's a difficult situation, and as Melissa iterated, we may not be at the bottom of this pit yet. And I've been fairly consistent once I knew what this project was about, because when I first got here and I didn't know what the project was about, I thought it was all about angels, but it's not. It still is a regional project. It's a local project. It's a Caltrans project. It's a county project. And I, too, in a former life as a director, had a very similar experience on a underfunded state project on a state highway where the local transportation commission indeed hired lobbyists who happened to be well-kept in. And we were able to get the funding and ultimately construct the project. Ultimate construction on it was roughly $45 million, and that was from a city of 10,000 population. So it's a similar situation where it's the little teeny county in a massive, massive transportation funding scenario. From my perspective, engineering-wise, we need to continuously, number one, finish the milestone, which is the PA&ED, the project report and the environmental document. So we now have a milestone document that takes the entire length of unengineered state highway, memorializes that, and then we attempt to tear off onto deliverable projects within that master plan, as it were, that we can fund ourselves. And the more we can pull off the bits and pieces that from an engineering and a public safety perspective deliver not only that piece of the master plan, but doesn't endanger the pieces that are not yet funded and are not yet built, the better off we're going to be. And it's obvious to me that the Appaloosa intersection meets both needs. It's the smallest portion of the project that is measurable, requires the least amount of right-of-way, and the least amount of construction cost. Because of the alignments of what we've got and the alternatives that we're looking at and the environmental costs of the portions that are new alignments on what we hope to be the preferred scenario, it's a huge project that if it was to be completely funded by the county, would never happen. So again, I'm advocating, I support what Melissa has proposed. I thank you for your votes and your direction, and we will continue to work with the COG and our other partners, including Alpine County. Don't leave them out of this. They have a major financial interest in getting more people up Highway 4 to Alpine County year-round. So we'll continue to work on this, and we'll look for those measurable, separable, accomplishable pieces. Thank you. Any questions?
Melissa, anything more on this item?
I have nothing more. There's no further comment. I think
I would,
I have
I
nothing
would
more
also contact Senator Gilziani, because, you know, they have an interest in making sure that when people come up 4 or any other highway in Calaveras County, that they're able to return safely. So, and she's a pretty good advocate, I think. Yeah.
Contacting who?
Galgiani.
Galgiani.
Okay, thank you for that.
And just a thought. Sure. When the group goes to meet with the legislature, is there a way we can video those folks coming out on the shoulder?
You know, I was just, I think, recognizing the work, Cole Video. So we've worked with them on the Angels Camp project.
If you go down there early in the morning, you catch, you show 7 or 8 cars going out in a matter of a few minutes. You just say, hey, if it's that bad, this is what the people are doing.
Yeah, Deborah's work was really good with him. So I think that would definitely be, if I could get the direction from the committee, we can bring a budget amendment before the COG board. I think that I would like to work towards that. Yeah, absolutely.
A school bus or two in the video wouldn't hurt either.
What's that?
A school bus or two in the video.
Yeah,
Right.
stopping, letting the kids out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then me and Steve can run across the road.
Okay, now the Caltrans shop program will be interested. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, agenda item number 16 is staff reports.
All right, Carly had an update on the Acela implementation, and she is not here, so if it's okay, I'd like to postpone her update to next month. She's the staff person that's been assigned to that. She's identified for you the schedule, but she's been actively working every week on bringing that to you so we can go live. We did have an update on the mobility manager position we wanted to make the council aware of. You are aware that the Calaveras Council of Governments received the grant for the mobility manager. We had initially written it to be an RFP in coordination with the CTSA development. I feel like we wrote it, is it 2 years ago already? 2 years ago. So by the time these cycles come along, a lot have changed. So we were to be going live with the program by February 1, according to our agreement with FTA. So we asked the council to run the position as an extra hire. We went through the action with the COG board, needed to do that. We ran a recruitment. The recruitment was during the holidays and unsuccessful. However, what we were able to demonstrate to FTA was our due diligence to aggressively meet their expectations in terms of being ready to go February 1. At that point, they gave us a one-time 6-month extension. So now we are sort of back on track with the initial plan on June 30th. It's sort of a blessing in disguise. So we just wanted to give you that update that we did get the extension, and that grant will now begin June 30th. As originally intended, actually.
We're gonna advertise for that again?
We will. So when we initially wrote the grant, we were writing it with the intention of looking at that position in conjunction with a community transportation services agency. And so right now we have a consultant that's helping us navigate our way through the formation of that. The Calaveras Council of Governments, according to the TDA, is required to have policies and a criteria for how we designate a CTSA. It's your responsibility to designate that agency, who is then entitled to claim LTF funds, up to 5% of the apportionment. So we are working with members of the community, stakeholders, trying to identify maybe who might be interesting partners in the community who may have an interest. The city can become a CTSA. The county, as a transit operator, could be the CTSA, and then they could contract out for services accordingly. And then also nonprofits are eligible. to be the CTSA. And so what we'll do is be working on those guidelines. We'll be working on the criteria for your designation. And if, the county may not be interested in being the CTSA, the council may decide that going out with an RFP, request for proposals, is the best way, at which point you would have the opportunity to identify the organization that has the greatest capacity to provide transportation services in the region. There's a lot that goes to it in terms of fiduciary responsibility. So that would be our responsibility to make sure that it does go to the most capable, qualified applicant. So not only would they be eligible for the TDA dollars, the LTF, they would also be eligible for the FTA dollars in terms of the mobility management and any other FTA dollars that they might need to support operations and capital in terms of what they need to provide transportation. So we do need to keep it competitive.
Have you thought about advertising in Metro Magazine or the Wall Street Journal for this position? It's a pretty good position.
It was, and we did advertise in all of our kind of connections that we have in terms of transportation. It's a dynamic position, the mobility manager, because not only do they have to have transportation service experience, they have to be really connected and know social service agencies and how to work with social service providers. It's unique, and not a lot of transportation planners have that experience, and not a lot of social service agencies have that experience. I think that the ability and the opportunity that we have before us now is the best scenario to marry the two with the CTSA discussion. And when we do, that RFP does go out to a network of hundreds on our list of interested agencies. And it will go out to all transit providers. We wouldn't limit the list to, we would include paratransit services, MV transportation, big agencies that provide services like this in other regions.
Any other staff reports?
So, Common Grounds is starting to get into the transportation industry as well for seniors and veterans. That's a consideration if you do nonprofits, right?
Well, and then that's what this council's responsibility will be, is to identify the criteria, identify your expectations, and then identify your level of, what the jurisdictions might be interested in terms of their level of oversight and responsibility. So the county could be the CTSA, and then they could contract out with non-service providers. They can do that now for the dial-a-ride service, or they can make those decisions now within their current structure. They can contract for veteran services, they can contract for volunteer programs. So if they were to step forward and be the CTSA, then the governance and the oversight would be the same. Where we start to have a little bit different decision and discussion is when we decide to take it out of the local jurisdictions and issue an RFP. And so then we'll be setting that criteria. But I think if there's a nonprofit in the county that is providing transportation services, that they would be an interested and eligible applicant. And I think what is really going to be important with this is looking to an institution or an organization that has the greatest capacity to coordinate service. So that's really what the primary function is not just being the service provider, but enhancing the volunteer driver programs and sort of being the conductor of a region of transportation players as your orchestra, so to speak. Bringing them all together so that they can do what they do best. So that's sort of the idea of an umbrella CTSA.
We are working with the local suspects, of which Common Grounds is a part of, and identify them as a stakeholder through one-on-one interviews with them.
Yeah. And that obviously is our goal. We want to know, is there anyone locally, first and foremost, that has the capacity to fill this role? Who are they? And make sure that they're aware of what we're working on. And so Amber is correct. We are trying to get a hold of those stakeholders and have them do one-on-one interviews with our consultant so that they have the opportunity to let us know, hey, we're here. Hey, we would be interested.
Okay. Does that
conclude your staff
Oh,
reports.
that was it. I don't have anything else unless you have something else.
Amber?
Oh, that was Amber's items. I messed it up. Okay, anything that I said that was factually untrue, I think for the record, it should be clarified.
She would have corrected you.
She would. I always tell them, you know what? I don't mind. You guys can interrupt and I can stand corrected.
Any council reports?
Nothing to report.
Yeah, I want to say something. A few months ago, well, actually, it actually started many years ago, when I was on the planning commission, when we would approve housing developments, we were doing so with the knowledge that many of our safety personnel, when they're in these housing developments, might not be able to call out. And that's always bothered me, but my term on the planning commission ended. And after I was sworn in, I remembered that and started to look for ways to maybe bring that forward again. Excuse me. And I had a meeting with Deborah Mullen and our executive from the COG board a few months ago, and we discussed ways where we could improve the communicative ability of our emergency personnel. And it's no secret that naming a new sheriff has kind of caused a little bit of concern, and we've developed how we're going to do that now. So after I walked out of there, I dragged my feet on it and didn't do anything with it. And fortunately, Melissa didn't drag her feet on it. She picked up the ball and started running with it, and I won't say that the project is done yet, but apparently she's made contact with CCWD and as well as some other people in our government agencies, and looks like we will be able to figure something out if we keep going in the direction we are and improve our communication capacity for our emergency personnel, and do that without costing tons and tons of money to any particular agency. So I just want to thank Melissa for picking that ball up.
Well, thank you for that, but it's not deserved on my part. It's really, I think, Wade Whitney at the Sheriff's Office, the Public Works Department, their IT department, and then John Gomes first and foremost. I don't know if many of you are aware, but John helped author a data share agreement between the COG, the county, and CCWD in early 2000s that is still in place today. And it was a great demonstration of collaboration. And Supervisor Kearney mentioned this idea and this concern. We got together as county staff and Sergeant Whitney, and we kept hitting a roadblock. We kept stumbling. It was a chance encounter that I had because, meeting with John over COG stuff, and I said, we're struggling. We don't know how to solve this. And John came to the table with county staff, with their IT department, with Sergeant Whitney, and they really rolled up their sleeves and went to work. It's one of the rare moments I think I have in public service where that's what motivates me and inspires me, is when you see agencies working together to solve a common problem. So I think if there's credit to be had in a celebration, it starts with John and Sergeant Whitney and our county staff, because they kept the conversation going. And I think the best thing that we can hope for right now is that we continue to keep the conversation going between the three agencies. They still have a lot of work to do technically, and we might hit technical barriers, but I think something for you to be proud of, Supervisor Kearney, is just to know how agencies are working together, on behalf of a concern that you had.
I am, and I knew that you would bring all the names up for me, and I thank you for doing that. It is a collaborative effort.
That's the success.
And I'm just really thankful. It's been something that has never left my mind, and to see so many hands pick up and cooperate, it's really a good thing. I'm going to bring this up to the Board of Supervisors too, because I'm thinking positive and thinking that something is going to happen. So in time there'll be an MOU that'll come before them, and I want to let them know. And also, if they see some of the county staff out there that needs a little help or encouragement from the board, I want them hopefully we'll encourage them to do that also. And we'll increase our ability to respond to emergency situations. If anything, the Butte Fire reminded us all of that. And, you know, it'll be a good thing for everybody, and it won't break any one particular bank. Thank you.
Good job. Well, Council, I want to thank all of you for asking me to serve as your chair again this year. Again, it's going to be a very interesting year. There's a lot going on, and I'm looking forward to working with Justin as the vice chair and listen, and again, an excellent staff that we have, where, you know, something like this is a pretty thorough, pretty well-researched document as far as the scenarios that we have to look at. And Melissa and staff brought this together pretty much in the last month or so, I would say, based on information that just came out from the state. So I feel very blessed that I have a very nice organization to be working with, as well as a great council, so thank you guys.
Welcome. Congratulations.
Yes.
And with that, I believe our next meeting is now scheduled as a COG board for March 6th at 5 p.m. And we have a special meeting now scheduled for February 24th at 5 p.m., location to be announced. All right.
Hey, Melissa. I know you didn't understand a dang